All right, all right, all right. Now I'm going to record week 3 attendance, and week 1 has actually started. So this is the first video I'm recording after the class has already started because I had been recording, as you probably have felt, before the start of the semester. So I've gotten a little experience and gotten to know several of you, which I have to say, I really encourage you all to check out my office hours. I really encourage you all to do Discord. I've really seen some great interaction on Discord. You might be getting used to my schedule where I get up early, I grade, I'm online quite heavily through the day, and then in the early evening, I'm out. So that's the schedule I work under, and Discord is there, to ask me with everyone else, right? Meaning not just me. And that's one of the things I'd like to say in this one is like try to refrain from tagging me in your post because if you do that, other students might think, well, Rio's going to reply, right? So they wouldn't. So just treat it as if you're in class and you're asking a question. Okay. And I know it can be a little intimidating for folks new to code, but just know that we're all still learning. No doubt. If I don't continue to learn, I just don't think I could teach anymore because it's the most fun part for me is actually learning something. All right, so I want you, and a couple of you I've said this too, but I just want to say this here, and I know this may not make sense, but on Discord, it's totally natural to think about reaching out to me, pinging me directly, but because of mandated um, conversation that that the campus has to be privy to, meaning they need to be able to review it. For any reason, I would want them to have that. You would want them to have that. Resist that temptation to ping me directly on Discord. Now, once you're out of this class, matter of fact, there's a couple of students who were almost excited for class to end so they could ping me on Discord. That's a different situation. Once you finish my class, then yeah, it's a little more right. Well, it's moved beyond you being in my class. All right, so let's talk about this week. So this week in week 3, we do functions. And I'm telling you, for those of you that have had any programming experience, you already know this. And for those of you that are new, one of the things we need our code to be able to do is do a chunk of work. And we often need to do that multiple times. And so, might be just once, but most of the time, we're writing functions that are reusable. And having that ability, having that understanding of how they work will just serve you throughout this course and just in your overall programming experience. Okay. So I'm excited for this week's content. Hopefully you're all, and it seems like by this point I've already seen a handful of you already do code along submissions and you're getting used to the process of when you have to commit. But again, if you have questions about that stuff, reach out to me. So there's two topics besides, because you're going to get the functions and then the Learn Together is going to cover you actually taking your week 2 Learn Together daily decision and refactoring it in there. But there's a video for that. So what I want to do in this one though, and let me just look at it real quick, is get rid of me. But I want to review our Dev 0 requirements. Now, having said that, let's actually go over here. And if you're not using the calendar, I'm telling you, it's really, really helpful. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to move forward. Yellow is really hard to see. But our first dev is on the 17th of February. Okay. So we're obviously at this point, I'm a few weeks ahead, but and the reason I'm saying it here is just to give you a chance to kind of think about, right, what and give thought to, because the more you think about what you're going to code up, the easier that will be to actually do it. So again, doing some pre-thinking on this is good. So I'm just going to quickly, actually I don't even have to run through the requirements because what I've done here is I've actually copied them from week 6. Okay, so this is the exact content as of today that's in there, right? Come up with an idea of what you want your code to do, or you could think about it as your concept, right? For me, I'm going to focus on my electric car. because I am this is still something fairly new in my life, and I'm tracking the cost of that. And so that's what I'm going to do is write code for this one based on the requirements that actually does track my EV cost of charging my EV. So then I have some specifics about where you put it. So let me just show you because I moved my code over and looked at it today. So it goes in your private repo, right? In dev underscore 0. Okay. And then once you're ready to come into a code review, and I'll have a schedule, right? So if I look back here at the calendar, I will have a schedule starting the week before for you to sign up for what will traditionally run when my office hours run. Although this semester I have a good problem, which is I have more students than I've ever had in this JavaScript class, plus my Python students. So I'm gonna run some additional hours starting the 10th through this week and through the following week. So the idea would be you sign up for a session either to get help or you sign up for a code review session sometime before the due date. But you have to submit that code on the due date, and then you'll have an additional week if you didn't make it in before to come in for your code review. But the key is that code can't change after it's submitted here. The benefit of coming in early is that you can actually come in with me. We can, if you could, what you do, what's called a review, an assistant session, not a review session, which is totally good. And I recommend doing it just to talk with me about this, which by the way, I'd say at this point also, don't wait till here. Like the sooner you come in and start talking to me about your ideas, the better it's going to feel, the better you'll have a feel for the way I handle some of this stuff. So just get to know me, and you and I get to know you a little better. But coming back to here, then, so again, if you do it before this, you can change it. It has to be submitted here. If you're doing it here, then your code review sessions will be on the code that you've submitted and not any changes. If you do change it after this or you submit it after this, it is late. Now, here's the deal. This is 50% of your grade. Okay. So here's the basic constructs of what the code needs to do. Variables. This is nothing too far out. Blocks global. Now I've already talked about, and I almost want to remove this because I want you to minimize the number of global variables. But strings, numbers, booleans, and objects. And this is what we saw in the week 3 Learn Together, the one you're doing this week, which is really understanding, right? At least 2 functions with one function returning value and using that return value in another function. You can use the display on page, but it will not count. So in this case, you have to learn how to return values and then use those values in another function, right? And then implement arrays in your code and update them with the method Andrew demonstrated in the course, or use methods of your choice, meaning there are a lot of other methods in MDN. Implement loops and produce meaningful output. Now, as I'm going over this, you're probably going, oh my God, right? But we haven't covered most of this. This week you get functions. So this is stuff we're going to be covering. We're going to be covering objects. We're going to be covering loops. We cover loops when we cover arrays, right? So nothing there. But here's the deal. It needs to be different. It needs to be your own code. This is not code again, don't go get this code anywhere. This is your code. It needs to be out of your own understanding of this. And trust me, you don't want to not do that piece. Okay. Now, has to be different than what you've written so far. You do have to walk me through your output using DevTools, so the sooner you get used to that, the better. We are going to conform to the Airbnb JavaScript style guide, which I have to talk about next because I realized I wasn't using it. But I'll show you a quick way I figured that out. So I just wanted you to have this, right? So remember that you have 3 of these code reviews. They make up 50% of your grade. They are a very important part of what you learn coming out of this class. So give these a thought. And in your reply, you can ask me any additional questions about this or anything on the concept. I love to talk to students about their concepts of what they want to code. So just know that the sooner you start thinking about this, the better. Okay, so now having talked about the whole semicolon thing, because Andrew Mead in his course says they're optional. Well, I actually started reading the the style guide, and I realized they're not in relationship to the style guide. Okay, so, and what they were talking about here is if you're using a linter, you can actually tell it to require. I used my prettier extension to make it easy, and I'll show you what I mean by that. So, as an example, if I go look at, I'm going to close this for a second. If I go look at my week 2 last week's JavaScript file, right? I didn't have semicolons in here, but what I did is I installed Prettier. So if you go into, again, I'm not going to require this, but I think if we all get used to writing Prettier is actually there it is, Prettier plus. Actually, which one do I have installed? These are installed Prettier. There it is. So this is the code formatter. And so in there, I was able to go into the settings and tell it to enforce semicolons, which was awesome. And the way I do that is you go in here, you go to preferences, and you go to settings. And then what you can do is semicolon. And then what it does is there's a settings file, which is a JSON file, something we learn about later. But under Prettier, you can actually say whether to add a semicolon at the end of the line. And I was like, oh, yeah, let the editor do it for me because I've been so resistant to doing it. So let me show you how easy this is. Back here, if I just select Control A, this whole code, and I go down here and I say format, and I can say format with, but because I already have it set up, and I just say Prettier, I just say format. Again, I did Control A and I do this. I go format document. Can I do format with? Oh yeah, see it defaults. So if I wanted to configure something else, I could. But look what it did automatically. And by the way, you should get used to writing well formatted code. And the nice thing is even if you don't write good code, you can always do that little trick of format document, which I highly recommend. And look what it did is it inserted semicolons everywhere for me because I'm lazy. I don't know if I'm lazy, but so get used to that. I noticed I was really resistant, and I was like, no, don't make the Airbnb style guide require it. And then I realized it did. So and here, and again, this is something that we haven't really talked about. He talked about it a little bit in the beginning, which was this using these extensions, but I noted, or sorry, these extensions like are linters. Now I use linters heavily in Python, but in JavaScript, I haven't reinforced them. But I think using this Prettier, just by itself, you can do these semicolons, and it'll just make your code look nicer and I guess conform to the style guide that I've set for us. So I had to get on board with my own suggestion. Okay, so what do I want here? Last thing is, let's see. The last thing, not the last thing, is that the instruction file is there for the this week's work. Okay, I do want to tell you at the end in your submission, I want you to tell me how well you feel you got the concepts covered, because there's some really important concepts here, and understanding this set of videos. I probably will say this every time, but really important. Okay. Oh, and then I meant to talk about this. I think what I'll do is actually, I did a little video last week about the dev tools and debugging. So maybe, maybe you don't need, matter of fact, that's what I would ask you. So as part of your reply, you could ask me about the dev, you could ask me about this, but here's my question for you is, do you know how to rock through code with the debugging tools? Okay. So if I was to come over to my dev and I was to run it, right? I have to stop my server. I'm going to start it up again. Okay. I ended up writing a random number of output of charging. I'll talk about this later, but right click, inspect, right? The first thing I would do is go over to sources. I click on app.js. I'd get rid of that. I'd have my console ready. And then I'd maybe set my breakpoint, maybe right down here at the bottom where, because everything above this is just functions, I would reload the page, which stops the output. And then I would use either F9 or just step, and I would step through my code. Okay. So do you know, that's my reply. So you could reply to any of those things, but what I'd really like to know is, do you know how to step through code using the debugger? Okay, in Chrome. All right. Have a good one. See you later.